guys, what's up? Welcome back here to today's edition of Intuitive Angling, and really appreciate you guys spending some time with me on the video today. And like the title said, I want to talk to you guys about, sometimes I feel like I'm talking to a brick wall with some of you guys out there in terms of bass fishing, because the goal that I have on this channel is to help you guys catch more bass, to help you become better bass anglers, to help you enjoy the experience a little bit more. And so much of the stuff that I talk about out there, it gets ignored in lieu of things that people are interested in that's really not going to help your fishing out that much. So what I want to do in today's video is I want to break it up in two different areas. I really want to go over some of the key elements that is going to allow your bass fishing success to go to the next level in a big way, instead of these little bitty tiny baby steps that a lot of people take that they think they're doing, they're on the right path. So if that makes sense, we're going to get into that in today's video, and I think by sticking around for the whole thing, you're going to come away with a lot better understanding about how to catch bass. Also, guys, a couple quick things. I just want to invite anybody interested in booking an on the water lesson with me. You can do that by going to my Facebook page, Randy Blaukat Professional Angler. Just shoot me a private message. And also, big thank you guys to everybody that's been subscribing to the channel and using all the links I put in the description to support the channel. Big thank you for me and my family, for everybody that's taken part of that. I really appreciate it. Okay, I've talked about this a little bit in the past here, as far as some of the frustrations of, trying to teach people to become better anglers. And I can sort of understand sometimes the frustration of like some teachers and college professors and stuff that really want to teach their students to become better, and it sort of goes in one ear and out the other. And a lot of times I feel like that, because in bass fishing, when you're talking in terms of becoming a better angler and really focusing on things that allow you to become really good with big leaps and bounds, instead of just like a little turtle, moving slow. A lot of that has to do with how you break up the things that are important as far as to learning fishing. Now, you basically have two different elements in fishing that you have to master in order to be a good angler, and that is an understanding of bass movement and behavior, their moods and personalities, just how they run patterns and how they use cover. And the other is understanding lure selection, casting angles, retrieve, cadences, that type of stuff to actually generate the strike. So you have to be good at two things. You have to understand how to get the bass to bite, how to trigger a strike, and that's from technique. And then you have to understand, where the bass live at. Now, I'm not talking about the cheater box, guys. If you're a cheater box fisherman, you're not going to learn anything from this, because this is real art form, hardcore bass fishing. It's not fake video game fishing. So it's just for real bass fishing here. Okay, now if you really want to get good at bass fishing, and I've talked about this before, you've got to have this shift in your mind in terms of placing priorities on what you need to really focus on. If your priority right now is on lures and new colors and new products coming out, yeah, that's going to help you catch fish, but it's not going to help you that much. If you really want to get good at fishing and you really want to maximize your potential as an angler, you have got to become a student of these bass, and you have got to study their movements and their moods and where they live and how they traverse different parts of the lake and how they set up and how they use different parts of cover. And the reason that a lot of people don't get into this is because it requires a long-term commitment. It's not like if somebody brought you up fishing with live scope and they taught you just the kindergarten level technique of using live scope. That's not the same thing. If you're going to understand all the nuances about bass, you can only do that by being on the water for decades and decades. And that's okay, guys. Nobody said anything about bass fishing. You got to, get good really quick, and you've got to get immediate success and immediate gratification. We live in a society right now that everybody just wants immediate gratification. That's why social media is so popular. But you can't do that if you want to be a real bass fisherman and become an artist at that sport. It's something that requires this lifelong, passion to do that. So here's my advice with it. It's like you have all types of information accessible at your fingertips through social media and YouTube, and especially YouTube is probably the best medium for that. If you would like start, cultivating your content preferences a little bit towards those things like seasonal patterns and understanding bass and learning more about bass, that's what's going to really help you out. Because when you go to a lake, if you have an understanding of bass movement and behavior and seasonal patterns, you know where to start out at. You know where to begin your search at. Not to say that the fish are going to be there every time, but it's not as intimidating. The more you understand about bass movement and bass behavior, you can pretty much look at a lake, a map of a lake, and the only thing you need to know is the water temperature and water clarity, and you will be able to look at that map and put yourself in some pretty high percentage areas based upon that information. But if you don't have an understanding with that, and the only thing you need to know, the only thing you care about is lure colors and new lures, you're going to struggle. Unless somebody tells you exactly where to go fish, you're probably going to have a pretty hard time with that. So I know that a lot of people probably don't want to hear that, because like I said, if it's sort of like me trying to tell somebody about the gym. It's like, okay, if you go to the gym, one or two or 5 or 10 times, you're not going to see any difference. But you go to the gym for a year solid, 3 or 4 days a week for a year, you're going to notice huge differences in a year. And it's just sort of the same in fishing. If you make that commitment to, if you make a commitment to focus on those things like I'm talking about, within a year or two, you're going to notice a huge difference in the amount of success you have. You're going to have less trips where you don't catch them. You're going to start consistently catching more fish. You're not going to be quite as frustrated as you would be, if you didn't know that much about it. Because make no mistake about it, guys, bass fishing in the real sense, not cheating in bass fishing like you use in the spotlight box, it's a hard sport, man. You're dealing with an inanimate object. You're dealing with a bass that has its own mind and its own, way that it goes about life, and you have to deal with controlled and uncontrolled variables of monumental numbers all the time. I mean, there's so many different variables that determine your success in bass fishing, and if you don't hit on the exact set of variables, you may not catch any fish. It's just like, if you're, say for example, you decide you want to go fish boat docks, if you don't get on the right type of dock, how the dock's positioned on a certain bank the right way, and if you're not approaching that dock with the right angle, if you're not putting your bait on the part of that dock where that fish lives at, with the right lure and the right weight and the right color, all that type of stuff, it's got to come together before you catch a fish. So, it's a difficult sport, but that's okay. It doesn't have, there's nothing said that it has to be easy. And finally, guys, just to wrap everything up, one of the things I want to reiterate here, it's not about catching fish. And I want to talk about that a little bit here before we wind the video up. I have been, and here's the example I'm going to give with that. I have been on trips before, not a lot of them, but I've been on enough of them to see this over and over again, where I'm catching them every cast. I found a group of fish, and it's boom, 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 boom. As fast as you want to throw in there, you're catching them. Or I've been on days that they're just biting, where I've caught like 100 fish in a day. And you know what happens after you start catching a ton of fish? If you guys have never been there, let me explain to you what happens. If you are catching tons of fish, eventually you get bored with it. And eventually it loses being special. And you don't have that same thrill and the same wonderment after catching 80 or 90 fish. It becomes routine. That is what I'm talking about, how it's not about catching, because catching eventually gets old and boring. It's about the experience and absorbing everything that is around you. You have got to absorb the nature part of it, guys. Do not discount that. Do not discount the importance of being immersed in the natural world, the sights and sounds and smells of the natural world. That's a big part of it. Another big part of it is the unknown. You don't know what's there. You got this unknown anticipation that it's sort of the fuel for fishing. And that's why I discourage everybody from using live scope and forward facing sonar, because it disconnects you from nature. it disconnects you from all the really, really key elements of fishing, where it just becomes a focus on catching bass and nothing more. And eventually, like I said, I know because I've had those days where I've just been ripping them right and left, it's not special anymore. So anyway, guys, hope that makes some sense, and we'll talk later. See you.